In this episode, we'll take a look at the search, color, and number input types. Let's begin with the most fun one that has the least amount of support, unfortunately, and that will be color. And as you might expect, this allows the user to see a color picker, built-in color pickers. Isn't that neat? However, it only works at the time of this recording in Opera. So let's load that up, and now you can see the default display in Opera for the color picker is like so. And now we can choose our special color. Or we can just click Other, and it will bring in the default color picker for you to use. Pretty neat. Unfortunately, that's not going to work in any other browser. So if I switch over to Chrome, what you'll see is, as with all input types, when it's not recognized, the browser will default to a regular text box. So this is the point when you would want to use what we would call a polyfill. And that means listen for what the browser does not support. If it does support these new features, use them. But if it doesn't, we're going to bring in this alternate script that will fill in the gaps, so to speak, or provide a JavaScript-based color picker. Next, we're going to take a look at the search input. So if I change that to search, this is fairly nice. If I come back, what you'll see is by default in most browsers, the input will display rounded corners, and this is very similar to what you might expect from, for example, the Apple search feature, where it's nice and styled and rounded. However, watch what happens if we return, and now we're going to add a new attribute called results. And if I come back, reload, now you can see it actually displays built-in very handy little search feature, and this is something we're all very familiar with. If I begin typing, another new addition is you'll see that an X displays that will allow us to delete what we've written, like so. If we try this out in Opera, you'll see that browser support is different again. In Opera, even though we have the results, we're not going to get anything. We don't get the removal, we don't get the nice search feature. And if we switch over to Firefox, you'll see that it doesn't support this yet, so we're only getting a default text box. But that's okay, it's not too different from what we would see in Chrome. Now, one thing I want you to note though is when we are using this input type, if I zoom in just a bit, watch what happens if I try to style it. So let's just bring it in right here, and we'll say input type equals search, and we're going to say the background color should be red. And what you're going to find here, if I reload the page, is that's not working at all. That's pretty weird. It's not taking effect. If we want to inspect it right here, you'll see that it is bringing it in. So why is that not working? Why don't we try padding 100 pixels, something huge? Nope, that's not working either. What's going on here? And I guess the idea is that a search input should look the same across all websites. Of course, we know that's not really practical, but I guess that's the idea. So they almost override your ability to style it. However, you still have control. You just need to know how to get control. And in this case, if you want to scrap the search input and use your own features, in WebKit, we would say WebKit appearance is none. And now if I come back, reload the page, it removes those rounded corners. And then once again, I can go to the input and set my background color to red. And now that works. So it's up to you if you want to keep in the built-in styling, or if you need a little more control, you can always take the WebKit appearance of that input and bring it back to nothing. And lastly, for this lesson, we're going to take a look at the number input type. And this allows us to specify that we only wish to receive a number. So if I close this out and I type some letters, it will submit, so there is no validation, but what we do get is this nice little ticker right here. I can click on it and I can specify my number. Now, if we switch over to Opera, you'll see it's more or less the same. Let's try to see if there's any validation. Nope, it'll accept anything. And finally, if we go into Firefox, I can type anything I want. Firefox does not yet support this type, so once again, it defaults to a text box. So this all might lead you to think it's not worth playing with these. Jeffrey's doing nothing but talking about all of the inconsistencies. And while that's true, you should still use them because they degrade gracefully. There's nothing wrong with using them right now. The only issue would be if you rely on them to work. So if you use the color picker, don't expect that to work in Firefox or Internet Explorer. It's not going to work, at least at the time of this recording. But a huge advantage to this is now we are describing it much more. So now we are describing that this input should only accept a number. This input should only accept an email. It's additional ways to describe our content, and that's really important.